welcome to True Justice Deep Listening, a Bigger Way of Knowing. This is a panel discussion that we're hoping will provide some insight into the student experience of a new on-country course offered by the ANU College of Law. My name is Sophia and I'm a Bachelor of Arts law student here at the Australian National University. And joining me in conversation today are my fellow law students, Aaron Bronnett, Lydia Corcoran-Eagleton and Georgia Crocker. Hey guys. Now, before we start our discussion, I'd of course like to acknowledge and celebrate the first Australians on whose land and airwaves we gather today and pay my respects to elders past and present of the Ngunnawal and Ngambri people, who are the traditional owners here in Canberra, where our ANU campus is situated. I'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of country throughout Australia and recognise their ongoing connection to land, water and community. I pay my respects to them and their cultures and to elders both past and present. And I'd also like to extend my respect to any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander viewers watching this session online today. So firstly, I'd like to share some background about the course. In 2021, the ANU College of Law, in partnership with the North Australian Aboriginal Justice Agency, announced plans to deliver the True Justice Deep Listening course in an effort to embed Indigenous understandings and perspectives in our legal education. Aboriginal-led and taught on country, this inaugural offering of this course was held in April 2022 in Central Australia and connected us as students with Aboriginal people speaking from their own roles and authority, including traditional owners, interpreters, lawyers, and academics. So I guess to start off the chat today, I wanted to ask you guys what motivated you to apply for the course. Georgia, we'll start with you if that's okay.
Yeah, thanks, Sophia. I found like the later I get in my law degree, the more I want to do critical subjects. This was one of the last courses I did in my degree, and I was really, really lucky, I think, to end the degree on it because it was a sort of fantastic way of looking back on the courses I've done already with a new perspective. So I did all of the Priestley's, all the compulsory courses, did evidence, got a very sort of black letter understanding of the way the law is supposed to work, and then was able to bring that to this course and sort of see how it matched up to my expectations. That was sort of what I wanted out of it in a very broad sense, though I don't think I understood when I was first applying for it how much of an impact it would actually have or really what I was signing up for.
Yeah, totally. Lyd, can we hear from you on what motivated you to apply?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll echo what Georgia said. Definitely, I think the main thing that made me apply, it just screamed different, something unique, a unique way of learning, of knowing, of reflecting on what I already know as a later year law student. It also helped that I knew that Dr. Hopkins and Azmi would be great conveners, and I know I would learn a lot from them, from my experiences with them throughout my law degree. And like all of us, I've had an interest in Aboriginal justice throughout my degree and throughout the subjects I've chosen. But I think this presented an opportunity to explore that interest in a different and very practical way.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. And Aaron.
Thanks, Sophia. I suppose for me, I've been very fortunate that I've been able to take part in a couple of ANU, a couple of the law school's flagship programs. I had previously done the law internship program at the Kimberley Community Legal Service up in Broome, and that was an incredible experience. I really went in blind to that and had such an incredible time. And I suppose I was inspired to do that because, again, of Azmi Professor Wood. I was in his LJE class back in first year, and I suppose that sort of lit the fuse for me in terms of my interest in Indigenous justice, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander justice, and the intersection of law and social justice issues. And when I saw this opportunity come up with Deep Listening, this course in the Northern Territory being inaugural, I just thought what an incredible opportunity, what a privilege to be invited to go to this amazing part of the world and listen and immerse ourselves in that place. So that would be my main motivation.
Amazing. Well, speaking of listening, one of the concepts we were introduced to really early in the course was Didiri, as you guys know, which is a practice for anyone watching rooted in spirituality and deep listening. Can I ask each of you to share your understanding of Didiri or deep listening and its significance in the context, especially of legal education and practice?
My understanding of Didiri is the sort of listening with all of your senses and listening with intent, I suppose, rather than listening and not hearing. I think it's being able to reflect after the fact is something we, as people, we are always thinking, and particularly as law students, there's a lot of often want to interject or rebut or think of counter arguments, and there's a lot going on sometimes when you're trying to listen to someone. But I think my experience with deep listening was kind of putting all that aside for the moment and really just being in the moment and appreciating what the person who was speaking to you had to say. But it wasn't only about, oral sort of experiences of listening in that way. It was also about, experience and more broad listening in a more broad sort of manner. And I'm sure the other two can speak to that as well.
Yeah, Lydia or Georgia, did you guys want to add anything onto that?
The only thing I will add is that, yes, it's about, for me, it's about listening deeply and hearing, like Aaron was saying, and broadly also, like Aaron was saying, but not only listening to voices of other human beings, for example, but really listening with all your senses to everything around you, including the land, including the sea, including other living creatures, and trying to bring that listening and understanding to a way of being in the world that encompasses and provides space for a way of understanding the world and how we can best nurture every part of what is around us so that we can live more harmoniously and perhaps in a more caring way.
Yeah, I love that Lydia says it's not just about listening to people. I think some of the first readings we had to do before we even started the course, before the semester had begun, were pieces in conversation with, and I'm going to butcher her name, but her name was Miriam Rose Ngunma Bauman. She was, I think, an Australian of the Year, who was really credited with popularising this concept of Didiri. And when she talks about it, from my understanding, what she talked about was listening to country much more so than listening to people. And when you think of it as a concept that arises out of listening to country, it makes really clear to me that it's listening without expectation, because you can't go out in the bush, sit on a log, listen to the birds and expect them to sing a particular way or expect a certain chain of events to unfold. All you're doing is watching and being receptive to what's around you. So like Lydia was saying, it's a really caring way of being in the world. And I think what we're being asked to do, or what we were asked to do in this course, was apply that form of listening to other people, which was really novel for me because, like both Lydia and Aaron have said, so often you find yourself in conversation with people trying to preempt what they're going to say next, trying to predict what they're going to say, maybe in good faith, maybe because you agree with them and you want to engage with them, but still so that you can respond and you're always positioning yourself for your next response. And when you take this attitude of listening that isn't about responding, but just about absorbing, about taking in information without necessarily trying to put anything out or respond in any particular way, I don't know, it's a much more caring way of being and interacting with people. And it creates, like both Lydia and Aaron have said, a lot of space for more meaningful connection, because you're allowing people and things to be as they are and not how you expect them to be.
So learning about the concept and the practice of Didiri wasn't the only preparation we did for the course. And as you guys know, the preparation we did was quite different to any other typical academic subject. Did you guys find that challenging, or was there a highlight? Georgia, we'll start with you this time.
Yeah, I've been trying to, I was trying to think about what preparation we did, because it's probably a selling point for the course is that there isn't actually a lot of reading or a lot of coursework beforehand. But what we did do was a lot of time sitting in circles on the lawns of the law library, like talking in groups and doing meditation led by Anthony. And I have to admit, I don't dislike meditation, but I'm kind of a skeptic. Like, I understand that it's great and it's very calming and everything, but I'm one of those people who is like, look, my brain's not switching off. Like, we can sit and I will enjoy sitting in the sun and that's fine. But I'm not going to find inner peace. So I think it was challenging for me from that point of view, because that's one of those real narratives I have about the way things should be. And it's exactly the kind of thing that we were being asked to put down and step away from in order to listen properly. And I did find once we got into the swing of it, we were doing the see, hear, feel meditation on the law library lawns. I did find that really calming once I could let go of worrying about looking silly or, mentally listing everything I had to do that day or trying to figure out how to do it best or things like that. So that's the sort of preparation that I found challenging, but I did find that quite fun.
If I could add to that as well, for me, I have the similar challenge, I suppose, of being a bit of a skeptic, just like Georgia, and meditation for me, I think I had thought it was all about achieving some sort of level of nirvana, at least which obviously is unattainable, particularly for someone like me. So I really was, not expecting much from those experiences, but being introduced to something like the see, hear, feel exercise, which Anthony led, actually, which embraces your natural tendency, I suppose, for your brain to just be drawn to the distractions in your life, and for your concentration to be lost, or your focus to shift. And that whole exercise is about embracing that and being more mindful of that. And I suppose that gave me a new understanding of mindfulness, in a different way. And it was an exercise which I thought was really helpful for sort of calming myself and, being able to particularly engage in an exercise like deep listening in an effective and respectful manner.
Amazing. Thank you, guys. So I know that heading into the trip, I was feeling a little bit, maybe not anxious, but a little concerned about how we would kind of be received in the communities and, by everyone we met, coming as a predominantly white and, from the ANU, presumably quite a privileged group of people who, whether you're a law student or already working, in practice or in some area of the law, we are somewhat representatives of this colonial system. And I was a little bit worried about kind of, how we were going to come across and how we were going to be perceived. And I know that my anxieties could not have been less validated when we arrived. We were, met with so much just hospitality and willingness to share and educate. And I think I wrote in one of my reflections that it felt very much like familial love and like familial acceptance, how we were treated by a lot of, everyone that kind of took us under their wing on the course. I was wondering if anybody would feel comfortable saying what they were most looking forward to on the trip, or what they were most nervous about, like I was. Lydia, we'll start with you.
Yes, I might go with the nervous part first. So I totally agree with you. Even as an Aboriginal person going out on country, I was worried about how we would all be perceived. But that sense of nervousness was allayed immediately. And I also feel so silly for thinking that it would go any other way. The people that we met were just so generous in how vulnerable they were willing to be with us, and how much of themselves they shared. I felt extremely lucky and grateful the whole time, and we constantly expressed that gratitude throughout the trip. Then in terms of what I was most looking forward to, first of all, the Northern Territory is a beautiful place. I'd never been before, so that was a huge I was just excited to discover the place. And the other thing I was most excited about were the people we were going to meet. I knew we were going to be yarning with traditional owners and elders who are leaders and inspirations in their own ways. And I was just so looking forward to spending time with them, asking them questions and listening to what they had to say, because I think these learnings are learnings that we don't get generally at law school. You don't get them from books, and these views aren't published. So you can't get them anywhere other than speaking to real people. And that is something that I found so, so rewarding from the trip. Like, for example, the person who painted this beautiful painting behind me was one of the main Aboriginal trackers in the Lindy Chamberlain case. And I got to speak with her, Auntie Daisy, about that. And that was something that obviously was never written anywhere. So I felt extremely grateful for that.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Lydia. Well, speaking of paintings, during one of our visits, as you guys know, we went to the Walkajara Art Centre, and we decided to collectively buy the artwork Broken Law Story by Frida Time, who's an Aboriginal artist based in the Mutijulu community. We felt that this artwork was really powerfully symbolising Indigenous and non-Indigenous people's relationship with each other and the law historically and in the present. Aaron, could you share a little bit more about the painting and its symbolism?
Absolutely. I was incredibly privileged to be part of this experience, I suppose, more broadly. But one of the wonderful sort of things that we've been able to take away was a physical painting. And there's a bit of a story around how we came to acquire it. We were in the gallery at Uluru when the lovely curator decided to give us an impromptu tour, to which Sophia, I'm very glad, accepted the invitation, and we invited us all down to come and hear from the curator. And she was walking us through the gallery when she really drew all of our attention to this beautiful work, Broken Laws. And the reason was because Sophia had explained to her what we were doing on the in the Northern Territory and what sort of course, and the amazing journey that we'd been on up to that point. And this lady explained the story behind this painting, which I'm going to try and do now. Essentially, the painting is broken up into 4 sections. Hopefully, there'll be an image of the painting shown for our viewers to be able to, as I explain. On the left-hand side, we have sort of the 4 sort of stages of colonialism shown in this painting, and the impact that that's had upon law, L-O-R-E. And the left-hand side of the painting shows people, Aboriginal people from the Central Deserts, situated around a watering hole. And you can see on the left-hand side as well that the first few white bodies start appearing around the watering hole as well. But most importantly, the line, which you can see, that represents Chukapa, which is which is law, effectively. And you can see that it's strong, that it's cohesive, and that importantly, it's unbroken. And go into the next sort of quadrant, I suppose, and you can see that there's starting to be instability in the circle, that more and more white bodies biracial Aboriginal people appearing as well. And this, as you can see, has led to the Chukapa being fractured. The law is being broken, and connection to that law is being impacted upon. That's shown in that line. And then in the third quadrant, we have more and more white bodies appearing around the watering hole, and those little red dots we were told represented the presence of substances arriving in the community, and all the sort of vices that I suppose colonialism, the colonisers brought into Indigenous communities. And you can also see that that the Aboriginal bodies are being pushed to the periphery, the peripheral sort of edges of the circle, and white bodies are starting to inhabit the centre at their detriment. And the first, those tombstones represent the lost youth. And I suppose it consistent with the rest of the course, which had a strong emphasis on radical hope, which we'll talk about shortly. The last quadrant represents a better future where everyone is included equally in the circle, with Aboriginal voices being heard and listened to, and everyone sharing in what this land and the resources and importantly this form of law has to offer all of us, and that is a future that the artist Freda Time has tried to envisage there. And I think it was a really powerful story, and we all were just so grateful when recently it was until recently an anonymous donor, but Justice Reshorgi, who has offered to purchase the painting on behalf of us as the students, are incredibly grateful, which allows us to gift it to the law school as I suppose a token that future students can look to as inspiration as to why they should take part in the course, and some of the amazing experiences they will undoubtedly also have, and the lessons that they, I'm sure, will learn.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Aaron. I don't want to take credit. I think it was Lily that organised that tour, but thank you so much for that info. And it was such an incredible day when I remember us all sitting in the dirt, kind of so hyped up, and I don't even think we all really were processing how we were feeling. It was very overwhelming, but we were like, okay, what do we do? Big feelings. What do we do with them? What do we do? So I'm so happy that it's all resulted the way that it has, with the painting now almost hanging in the law school, and hopefully it will for a very long time. Well, Georgia, do you have any experiences that were quite similar in that they very powerfully shaped your understanding between, colonial law and its relationship with First Nations people?
I don't think so. That's been the thing about this course. It's absolutely without parallel in my experience. And like you were saying, I have this really strong memory of everyone sitting cross-legged in the red dirt in a big circle and discussing this painting and making these plans to bring it back with us. And it was so powerful, because we finally got, I think the thing was, at the point that plan sort of crystallized, we finally felt like we had a way of bringing some of the things we'd learnt back with us. Otherwise, they'd be sort of staying in our heads. They'd be emotional changes or spiritual changes or intellectual changes, but they'd be so difficult to communicate. And I think something all of us have found coming back after this course is that it has been really difficult to communicate to people exactly what we experienced and what it's meant to us. But I think, just to emphasize something Aaron was saying about the painting, and something that really epitomizes a lot of the course for me, is the final sort of panel of the painting is about First Nations people and white people living together. Sophia and Lydia, you were saying earlier that you sort of expected to be met with people who were saying, well, why are you here? Why are you coming to talk to us? And I think I'd go one step further and say I was expecting to meet people who were really angry, because I imagine if this sort of thing, this dispossession, this violence, this brutality, this racism happened to me or to people I care about, I imagine that I'd be furious. And that's not what we've met with at all. And the future that the people we talked to were imagining, and the sort of future that they had hoped for, wasn't one without where the white legal system or the colonial legal system didn't exist, or where there were no white people, there was no sort of interaction. It was a really like properly integrated system that was working, that was incorporating First Nations law and working to the benefit of both cultures. I think that's something that I might have been able to sort of articulate in theory before I went on this course, but there's no way that I had the sort of depth of understanding of it that I do now. That the sort of the responsibility we have as law students is really to be working towards this vision of this future in which the two legal systems, and I use that consciously because they are two legal systems, are integrated and working for the benefit of two cultures.
Thank you so much. Lyd, did you have anything to add to that?
Only that I would agree. There was this sense that anger isn't doing anyone any good, and the way we move forward is by forgiving, not necessarily forgetting, but forgiving and working towards the next thing. Because I think that I would agree with you, Georgia. I was thinking, how are these people not more frustrated? Because we were all up there having these really heated discussions amongst ourselves about what we were seeing and how ridiculous and how screwed up the whole system is. And I think that the idea that you have to go to the Northern Territory to see how screwed up the system is a myth. It's everywhere in Australia, but perhaps more in your face in the Northern Territory. And it was really inspirational, the resilience and the forgiveness, and how Aboriginal people were just they're just caring people, willing to embrace others and move on from extreme hardship so that everyone can be better as a result. Because, this anger and frustration isn't going to get us anywhere.
Can I just jump on that? Because one of the things we did was we went to the outstation at Tempe Downs, and we were sitting down of an afternoon in conversation with Uncle Johnny and Uncle Mario. And one of the things they were telling us was about the Northern Territory intervention and how it occurred at Murrujulu. And one of the things I think Uncle Johnny said that's really stuck with me is that he said when the police officers came to Murrujulu, to the community next to Uluru, they came in with their guns unholstered. And Anthony was doing these reflective videos throughout the course. He was pulling everyone off to one side and filming them on the iPad. So he's got videos of me borderline crying and swearing and being very angry and upset about this, just hearing this story. And the people who had lived it were willing to stand there and talk about it to a room full of 15 or 20 strangers. That kind of grace and poise and vulnerability is just incredible. I was so grateful for it.
Yeah, no, such a beautiful addition, Georgia. And I think it was, I'd even go one step further and say not only were they willing to share and be so vulnerable and so open, but almost even comfort us in moments, when we were so kind of taken aback by, the details of their experience and just the depths of this intergenerational trauma throughout their families. And we were so confronted and kind of really struggling to process it and comprehend it in moments. And they were there, with a hug and food and comfort. And like you guys have also beautifully summarized, just such a focus on a shared future and a shared solution. It was so special. You had to be there, as they say. You have to experience it. Speaking of the little family, in addition to the workshops, we were immersed in new cultural activities and practices, and one of these was the in-ma ceremony of the emu dance. I know that was a really powerful moment for a lot of people on the trip, a lot of students and teachers as well. So I was just wondering if anyone wanted to speak on that experience, or if you had another similar experience that you wanted to expand on a little bit. Aaron, I'll start with you.
Thanks, Sophia. It was somewhat nerve-wracking to be invited to take part in such a sacred part of their culture, and to be invited to do that was no. I think it showed that we had developed trust and a mutual respect between the group, and Uncle Johnny and his family, Uncle Mario, and all of them. It was said before that I think Anthony told me this. I didn't see it myself, but take the word for it that he saw the grandfather, the patriarch of the family, sort of scoping out the group and whispering to Mario, and they were what Anthony thought that he was seeing was he was sussing out their group effectively, and I think they were he was judging on whether we were right to be taking part in this ceremony, and to have been afforded that opportunity, I think is something that we cannot take lightly, and something that most people are not given. I know Anthony, for one, had been to the Northern Territory many, many, many times, and he'd said that he'd never experienced anything like that. So it was particularly special for him as well, as someone who's married to an Aboriginal woman from that area as well, I think, and has Aboriginal children as well, obviously. So it was a really powerful experience to have been part of. I don't know what Lydia and Georgia thought, but yeah.
Yeah, Lydia, do you have anything to add? Did you want to add to what that experience was like for you, or did you have a kind of similarly impactful experience or moment?
Yeah, I think that experience was extremely powerful. But perhaps to talk about a different one, I just found that being out on country was the powerful part for me in a lot of aspects. Whilst ceremony was incredible, I think that the way that the country greeted us day in, day out was really special, and it made me feel at home there. The sunsets, sunrises, like the day that we spent at Tempe Downs, and the weather was just so beautiful, and the water was just so refreshing. There was so much about the trip that was perfect. And I remember speaking with Auntie Kylie and sharing this with her, this feeling that I got, where it kind of felt like the country was just wrapping us up and saying, you're welcome here and thank you for coming. She just said to make sure you thank the country back, and that's something I hadn't done before. So I made sure when I left a place, I would always say thank you to the country for having us, and make sure to leave it the same way that we found it.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Georgia, did you have a moment you wanted to add?
Yeah, I don't have something distinct from those two things. I had similar thoughts to what Lydia said about feeling at home, and I was really surprised by this because I hadn't been to the Northern Territory before. And what you hear about the land is that it's so hostile, so dangerous, that it, resisted white colonization for so long because of how rough, how rugged the land there is itself. And it was so stunningly beautiful. And a lot of the experience of the trip was really heartbreaking when you're trying as much as you can to listen to the things people are telling you, and the things they're telling you are really just the sort of personal griefs. And the antidote I found to that was being on country. That was the thing that made all of that sadness and frustration bearable, was the sense of like peace and belonging that I was really, really surprised to find there. The other thing I wanted to say was about INMA, just because that really sort of changed my understanding of country as well. Like, we talk a lot about Indigenous sovereignty at the moment. It's become kind of a sort of a hot button word, a hot button issue. And sitting like under the sunset at Tempe Downs, watching INMA be performed really gave me a sense that I hadn't before had, that like this land is Aboriginal land, not in like a technical sense, not in a political sense, but as a really just an undeniable fact of the way things are. Like that was so obvious there, so manifest to me in a way it hadn't been before. And I want to say as well, that's obviously not like something that's true only of the Northern Territory, but that was a really powerful experience. It was the first time I'd seen that.
Yeah, I think something has to be said about being welcomed onto country by the traditional owners who, know the environment and the land and the community better than anyone. I think that really opened doors for me to be able to experience the place, and the country that we were in at the time. Speaking of experiential learning, it just made me kind of reminded me of when we were all on NAAJA country at the little family home, and we were in the yarning circle. And I think Uncle Johnny was, well, actually it happened a few minutes before that. We were sitting in the dirt, and I was just thinking to myself, like, whoa, I haven't felt stressed in a couple of days. Like I haven't felt like panicked or like riled up, or I haven't been thinking about all the things I have to do. I've just been, so present and so calm. And I was, picking up the red dirt. I feel like dirt seemed to be a bit of a theme throughout the course for a lot of us, but I was kind of picking up and playing with it and rubbing it over my body and, getting it under my fingernails and just feeling really at peace and calm in the environment. And then a few minutes later, Uncle Johnny said to all of us, you need to understand the dirt is the law. Like our dirt is the law. The red sand you're sitting on is the law. And that, I got kind of shivers all over my body. And that was a real impactful moment for me about experiential learning and why we were on country. We weren't just learning about this, over Zoom lectures or through readings or anything like that. I guess I wanted to ask, like we said, the clinical programs and courses that provide experiential education are so transformative. How are you guys kind of hoping to apply what you have learned in this course in your career going forward, or in your life going forward, even not in a professional sense? Aaron, can I start with you?
Sure. I think, people who go to law school, at least at the ANU for sure, there's a whole bunch of different career trajectories that people head on once they graduate. Obviously, many people head into public service. There are a lot of people at the ANU Law School who then go into private law firms. Some people, that's their lifelong ambition, and that's great. And the reality is that this course, I think, is tailored for everyone. It doesn't matter what you're going into. This knowledge, this experience means that it will define the way that you operate in whatever role that might be, as a lawyer or not as a lawyer. And I think that's really amazing. I don't think there's many courses that you could say that about. It really also turns on the fact that I think this course should be rolled out beyond law students. I think it's got applicability for people that want to be, that are already magistrates, that are already doctors, lawyers, engineers, people that work in communities, or definitely politicians. And so I think this sort of course, definitely a lot of us had a career crisis on the course. There's no doubt about that. People who had thought, yes, I'm going to work in a commercial law firm. Well, definitely, when you go out to a place like that, you want to, you definitely end up rethinking what you want to do, and that's a wonderful crisis to have, I think, and it's definitely shaped the way that I want to define my career. Whether it will take me straight to the Northern Territory out of law school, I don't know, but it's definitely something that I'll be wanting to do. I definitely want to spend some time as a bush lawyer. The need out there is so pressing, evidently, and for people that have those qualities that make a good lawyer in those communities, that there's clearly a shortage of those people that are culturally competent, people that listen in the true meaning of the word, deep listening, and have an understanding of the law. Those things don't always, and that's the colonial legal system and also the traditional legal systems that are very much alive and active in these parts of the world. Those sorts of lawyers are not easily found, I suppose. And this sort of course, I think, if it's rolled out more extensively, hopefully we'll build up a large group of Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal lawyers who can go and make a difference. So, yeah.
You remind me of some of what we were learning. I think it was that we were learning about when we walked through Uluru, the No Justice Without Care. I can't remember what the story was called, but maybe one of you will, if not. But yeah, Lydia or Georgia, did you guys have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think that it's in some ways indulgent to be able to sit around and talk like this about this experience that we've had, when the reality is not so pretty. Yeah, it was a great experience for us, and it was so valuable in so many ways, and we've come back with a lot of learnings, and we're so grateful for those learnings, sure. But I think that experience has to go deeper than being able to sit around and say that we had this amazing time and then go on living our lives turning a blind eye to what we saw in the Northern Territory, which is happening everywhere and is really insidious. So I think the way I will apply the learnings to my career is a duty, I feel, to not to give back, but to move in the world in a way that is cognizant of what we saw and what we now know and the teachings that have been shared with us, because that level of generosity and vulnerability cannot be repaid by simply turning a cold shoulder and saying, not my circus. I don't want to deal with it. It goes so much deeper than that. And I think as law students as well, it's such a privilege to be able to have a legal education, a colonial legal education, and because it is so inaccessible to people, if you in your career can make it accessible in some way to others and be of service and be of help, then I think that that's something that we have to do. There's a duty there to everyone with a law degree, really, because of the privilege that comes with it. So that's how I think I'll apply it in my career. And maybe that will take me to the Northern Territory. Maybe it won't. Maybe it will one day, but it doesn't necessarily have to, because you can move in that way that is caring and thoughtful and deep listening without having to be on country in the Northern Territory. You can do it in your everyday life.
I totally agree. And I think one of the things I wasn't prepared for when we spoke to elders and traditional owners was they kept talking about responsibility with us and saying to us very directly, you have a responsibility to fix this, to try and fix this. You are young professionals who are going into the places where these laws are made and where these decisions are made. And you have a responsibility to ensure they're made fairly and correctly and justly and made well. So while I'd sort of gone in expecting to have what would have been in some ways a neutral experience or a passive experience of learning, much the same way you might listen to a lecture and take it all in, what we got out of it, or what I got out of it instead, was sort of quite directed. And it's one of those things where I feel like, having been told that and tasked with this responsibility and having had my eyes open to these things, it would be wrong for me to go on with my life in the way that I might have planned before. I was one of the people who had a career crisis. Not that I was particularly planning on going to a commercial firm, but it was on the cards. And I think I've actually been really grateful as I've been graduating to have had this experience and this sense of responsibility, because for me it's narrowed down the options of what I feel like I can do. It would feel wrong and irresponsible of me to go and work now in a job that wasn't directed in some way, either on a personal level or on a systemic institutional level, to fixing some of these things.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm mindful that we don't have too much time left, but just on that note, I feel like we're all, a lot of us came into the course with very similar, maybe not a extensive understanding or, knowledge of everything that we were about to learn, but similar beliefs. Some of us had been involved in, LRSJ or, extracurricular that was similar in theme. Would anybody have any advice to give to students who are considering the course but unsure if it's for them and they haven't really been involved in anything like this in their studies previously or life previously, just to finish off?
Can I say, contrary to absolutely everything I just said, this isn't a course you should do because you care about social justice. This is a course you should do because you want to understand the way the law works. I think we all came to it from a social justice perspective. But one of the big things I took away from this was we went to the local court in Alice Springs, and you see that every single person, every defendant there is Indigenous. And a lot of the people in court don't understand what's happening. They don't speak the language. They're clearly not engaged with the court process. And, we saw someone get given a fine and with no explanation of how they were to pay it. And they were about to get in trouble for not having paid the fine previously, for not understanding how they were to pay it. And they're sort of given the same fine again 6 weeks later and sent out of court, and no one's making any attempt to explain to them how the system should be working, what they should be doing to comply. There's just really being set up for failure in the most basic ways. And it's tempting to talk about that as a failure of the court system in some way, or an expression of racism in certain parts of Australia and things like that. But I think what is important to understand, and this is something John, one of the NAAJA lawyers, was explaining to me, is that that's not the system being broken. At present, that is the way the system is intended to work. What John said to me was that police brutality and police violence in communities like Yuendamu or Murrujulu is not an exception to the way the law is meant to work or the way politics is meant to work. It's the rule. And police being tough on crime in those communities is what buys them the votes of the white community in Darwin. So this is not something you should do because you have strong social justice ideology so much as because you want to understand all of the ways in which the legal system works, even the ways that tend to be hidden from us because they're happening in remote and rural regions of Australia.
Yeah, thank you so much. Did anyone have anything to add to that?
I think that if you are lucky enough to be able to take on this experience, it's one that you can definitely not turn down. I think that a lot of us spoke about how it should almost be compulsory, or some learning of Aboriginal law as law should be compulsory, because I think at law school we all learn about how colonial law impacts Aboriginal people and Aboriginal communities, but there's no talk of what Aboriginal law is and that Aboriginal law exists and is a type of law. So that acknowledgement, whether it be through this course or through some other course, is really important. And if you can get onto the course, on this course or some other course where you can learn about Aboriginal law, I think it's an absolute honour and privilege and shouldn't be turned down, no matter whether you want to go into working at a community legal centre or whether you want to work in government or at a commercial firm, wherever. The skills that you learn are transferable to any career path.
Yeah, I think Anthony summed it up really beautifully when I think I was having one of my million career crisis breakdowns, as I think many of us did on the drip. I was like, I don't know how I best support and how I, best amplify and assist and how I be the best ally that, someone can be after this experience. And he was like, well, it's just about living with the reality that whatever you're doing, wherever it is, if it's on Australia, you're doing it on stolen land. And as long as you take every opportunity and consistently strive to keep learning about the implications of that and the consequences of that and the manifestations of that, then, that's a good start. which I think is probably a fitting note to conclude the conversation.
Could I add one thing? Sorry, Sophia.
Absolutely, no, of course.
I just think there's a lot of students entering their final years are often anxious, anxiety-ridden over the small number of electives really that we have to decide, and people want to tailor their degrees to, appeal to whatever career they want to end up in, and they think, well, I need to have tax law, and I'm not knocking tax law, but I'm just taking it as an example. All these courses need to appeal to their dream employer, and there would be a number of students that I imagine would overlook a course like this because they think, it seems like airy-fairy law and it's not black letter, which is, can I just say, as everyone else has said, so far from the truth. This is law. This is the reality, the way that law operates in this country. And there is no more hard-hitting, true and raw expression of the way that the legal system currently operates here. And I think that is an experience that people would be incredibly wrong to turn down, and it's one that if you apply, that's all I'll say. apply.
Yeah, thank you, Aaron. I think that it's like I don't know if it was Lydia or Georgia that said it, but this is something that everybody should be doing. So the fact that we were privileged enough to go on this opportunity, while it is, still such a pilot, an early stage of the course, it's such a privilege. And if you have the opportunity, you'd be mad to turn it down. But yeah, I think we'll end it there, guys. Thank you so much for sharing your insights and experiences. And I will take a minute just to thank the ANU academics, Anthony Hopkins and Asmi Wood. I know that it's not limited to those two, but they have just been so incredible in everything that they've done for this course. And our NAAJA partners, especially Christy Bloomfield and Tanya Turner, and of course, John Braunsley, who we were on the course with, and just all of the traditional owners that we met and guided us and educated us and took us in the way that they did. And finally, Chris and Karen Marks, who sponsored the course. It was pretty much through their generosity. I can't speak for everybody, but I know that I couldn't have been able to go on the course without them. So they just did so much. And yeah, if you're watching this as a possible future sponsor, please do it. Because it couldn't be a better thing to invest in. And finally, just the administrative team for College of Law, who did so much work for the course. They were incredible, and we're so thankful. But yeah, if you'd like to learn more about our course, Legal Education for True Justice, Indigenous Perspectives and Deep Listening on Country, you can find more information and links to other resources, including a video for our course, in the description. Thank you so much, everyone, and bye for now.